In the dead of night, in the sky of a city, the sounds of Kayden's battle with his rivals echoed. Some flashes of light could be seen. The fight was highly uneven. Kayden was fighting against several enemies. The opponents attacked together and delivered an almost lethal blow, causing Kayden to fall to the ground. Fallen on the ground, with a very serious injury and exhausted after expending a lot of energy in the fight. His breathing was weak, and he was sweating profusely. He needed to quickly find a way to escape unnoticed. Kayden could only think that, if it weren't for the multiple enemies attacking at once, he wouldn't have been in this situation. In the alley, he could sense the presence of the enemies, and knew he needed to do something to restore his energy. At that moment, he hears the yawn of a large cat in the alley. Kayden looks and notices the cat, imagining it might work. He had never done it before, transmuting his body into a cat. The two-tone cat, yellow with white, was lying on some crates, watching the young man's reaction. As Kayden approaches the cat, a huge beam of light envelopes the entire area, completing his transmutation. Dawn breaks over the city. Stores are preparing to open, and the first customer at a pet shop is a very enthusiastic student. He looked at all the cat products with great excitement. Gazing at the shelves, the boy noticed some treats. He could only think about how many cats would love all those new items. He also planned to take advantage of the fact that the shop had restocked a treat he used to love buying some time ago. He paused and thought he wanted to take them all, but there were so many that he didn't know how to do it. He ended up deciding to take them all, making the pet shop owner very excited and happy. Walking back home, he realizes that he had gone out to buy food for himself, but ended up buying only for the cats. But that didn't matter to him. What really mattered was that the cats would be happy with all those purchases. Nearby, while waiting to cross the street, a boy drops his ball. He watches as the ball rolls into the street, and the boy runs after it. He sees the car approaching the boy who was chasing after his ball. He quickly glances at the boy. His eyes widen, and he starts to sweat. He had to do something. With the car's headlights already glaring at the boy, who had frozen in fear, the kind young man hears the screeching of the car's brakes and, like a flash, darts across the street among the people and grabs the boy. Everything happened so quickly. By the time the ball hit the ground, the boy was no longer there. They were now on the sidewalk, out of the street. The boy was safe, and the young man breathed a sigh of relief, hugging him. The boy looked at him, not fully understanding what had happened. The young man checked to see if the boy was alright and thanked the heavens that he wasn't hurt. What a scare he had taken. People on the sidewalk began to comment, asking each other, "Did you see what happened? That was dangerous. Where was the boy?" The child's savior could only think, "I'm glad I was able to save him using my abilities." The boy's mother, checking to see if he was okay, asked if he was hurt, and said she was very worried about him. The child said he was fine and, pointing to the crowd, mentioned that the young man had saved him from the car. However, the mother couldn't distinguish who the young man was in the crowd. He thought that he had used his abilities reflexively, but that day, he had managed to save someone without being seen, though he knew that if he wasn't careful, one day he might be discovered. In the evening, the young man was talking to the cats, telling them that he had been delayed because of an incident. Placing the treats he had bought earlier at the pet shop, he noticed the cats were acting differently. Concerned, he asked the cats what was happening with them. The cats meowed, trying to communicate. He was very worried because none of the cats were eating, and he had bought everything with so much love. One of the cats meowed, catching his attention, and seemed to be distancing itself. He then stood up and began to follow the cat, asking why they were acting strange and not eating today. The cats seemed to want to tell him something, but since they couldn't, they kept walking, and the young man followed them. The young man asked if they wanted to say something and if he should continue following them. The kittens kept meowing, and the young man followed, asking where they wanted him to go. When the cats stopped at an alley but didn't enter it, the young man asked if Alice had already arrived. Looking into the alley, the young man was very startled to see a two-toned cat, yellow with white. Of course, being a cat lover, he didn't hesitate and picked up the cat to take it home. The cat, unconscious after receiving the young man's care, was lying on a bed and slowly began to regain consciousness. Little by little, it managed to open its eyes and saw the ceiling of a house. Soon after, with some effort, it also saw one of its white paws. It lifted its two-toned paw, white with yellow, startled, looking at the image. How did it suddenly have paws? Observing its soft body, it realized that it was now a cat and remembered that, in that moment of desperation. Seeing the soft kitten lying on the crates and with no time to find another body, he had extended his hands to the cat's head and started the transmutation. Using the last of his power, the transmutation was successfully completed. This meant he had succeeded in transmuting into a different life form. Like a cat, the large, two-toned cat heard a high-pitched voice saying that he had woken up. It was the voice of the young man who had saved him, who told him that when he found him, he couldn't even stand and was afraid he had died. Very happy, arms wide open and making various gestures, the young man said that now the kitten was fine and didn't need to be scared. The young man, smiling broadly, looked at the cat, but the cat could only think that the child had picked him up while he was unconscious. Very happy and almost unable to believe that the kitten was really okay, the young man asked him to wait a moment and went to get something. However, the cat wasn't the least bit eager for the young man's return, finding it very irritating. The young man returned with 2 bowls in hand, one with treats and the other with cat-safe milk. The young man continued to question the cat, asking why it was in such a state and why it was covered in blood. Although the young man had cleaned and cared for the cat, he wondered for a moment if there might be something he had missed. Pushing the bowls closer to the cat, he said, "Here, kitty, here's your food." Very happy and attentive, the young man told the cat that it could eat everything to get better soon. However, the cat looked at the scene with anger. He was bored with that place. The cat watched with hatred as the young man opened a can of wet treats to put in the bowl and served to his cat. Still talking to the cat, the young man looked at him and asked him to eat everything to get well soon. The young man was very worried about the kitten. The cat then smelled that strong fish aroma and got irritated, wondering if that pest really had the audacity to serve feline food to Kayden. The young man kept insisting, staring at him and asking him to eat to get better soon. The cat also made a very strange face. He didn't like that situation one bit. Lying down, the cat heard his stomach rumble and tremble with hunger. There was no other choice, thought the cat. If they believe I'm a feline, then I'll act like one. He decided he would just drink a little of that milk in the bowl, just to regain his energy. However, while distracted by drinking the milk, he was suddenly grabbed. The young man started to hold the cat up. At that moment, he was determined to check if the cat was male or female. The cat looked at him and said, "What do you think you're doing? How dare you?" The young man heard a firm, masculine voice and looked around, thinking he might have left the television on. Still holding the cat, he asked if the cat had also heard that voice. But Kayden wasn't interested in any of that. He looked at the young man and warned him to let him go immediately, or he'd cut his ears with his claws. The boy's eyes widened, petrified. He didn't know what was happening, but he thought he had heard the cat speak. Leaping back to escape, he wondered if he was really talking to a talking cat. He stayed in the corner, trembling and sweating. "I'm sure I saw this cat talk." The cat, however, warned the boy to start listening to what he was saying. If he didn't stop, he would sink his claws into him. Now, with the boy silent and quiet in the corner, the kitten walked over to him. The boy, scared in the corner with wide eyes, just watched the cat. The cat, in a very frightening tone, asked the boy what his name was. The boy didn't answer, and the cat became more irritated, shouting, "What is your name?" Furious, the cat flattened his ears and, snarling, asked the boy if he really had to repeat it again. The boy finally responded that his name was Jiwoo, and the cat said very well, and asked him to fetch a chair, pointing to it. The boy quickly ran to get the chair to make the cat happy. He placed the chair in a position for the cat to climb up and stepped back a little to observe. As it was difficult for the cat to climb the chair, Kayden imagined that it shouldn't be so hard since he was a skilled cat. With much difficulty, Kayden managed to get the entire mass of the cat's body onto the chair. He thought to himself that it took a long time to climb only because he wasn't yet accustomed to that body. After getting onto the chair, the cat sat down, and the boy just admired him. Kayden, noticing that the boy was looking at him with great admiration, grabbed him by the shirt and warned that if he told anyone, he would kill him. He realized he had been discovered faster than he had imagined, but he was controlling that boy. However, the chair had been placed in front of the mirror, and the reflection of that huge, fat cat caught his attention. Kayden, the bicolor cat, yellow with white, looked in the mirror and asked who that fat cat was. Holding his face, he said that that double chin was enormous and couldn't belong to a cat. Also squeezing his belly, thinking it was very fat, his eyes widened as he realized that the cat reflected in the mirror couldn't be him. He was very disappointed, thinking that fat, disgusting cat couldn't be the great Kayden. Unable to bear the pressure, the cat fell off the chair, and the boy, who had been watching the whole time, rushed to his aid. Thrown on the ground in a severe depression, there was Kayden, the fat cat. The boy, very scared, with the kitten in his arms, asked what had happened because, after shouting, he had fainted. Jiwoo shook the cat from side to side. Kayden didn't respond. He was very upset about having transformed into that cat. The boy begged him not to die. At that moment, Kayden responded to the boy to stop that. The boy asked the cat if he had regained consciousness. Kayden replied that he had never lost it. Putting the cat back on its two little paws, the boy was very happy and told the cat that he was scared when it lost consciousness. Kayden looked at him with a strange look, unable to imagine why this boy would care about him losing consciousness. Jiwoo looked at the cat with much love and admiration, always with a smile on his happy boyish face. On the other hand, Kayden was not happy at all with the cat's body, which he imagined was very obese. Kayden growled and got very stressed, thinking that of all the existences, he ended up in that fat sack of lard. The boy, very happy, asked for Mr. Cat's permission, but Kayden interrupted him, asking to be called by name. The boy said he had a question for Kayden, who asked him to proceed. The boy's question was how he managed to speak. The cat replied that he could speak because he was a person. The boy, repeating the answer, asked if he was a person. Kayden explained that, although he was in a cat's body at that moment, he was a person just like the boy. The boy, full of questions, continued asking Kayden if it was possible for a person to transform into a cat. The cat replied that you could see if it was possible just by looking at him, and that, in theory, he imagined it was possible. The boy's questions, which were many and were getting on Kayden's nerves, came one after another. The boy continued to ask why the cat was in that alley all covered in blood. The cat replied that it wasn't his concern either. Kayden warned the boy that, despite having met in an unexpected circumstance, he didn't need to know more than he already did. The boy said he understood, and after that, there was an awkward silence, interrupted by the cat's stomach growling. The boy tried to convince the cat to eat, telling him that, although he was human, he was now in a cat's body and should eat like a cat. He continued trying to persuade him to eat, saying that human food wouldn't be good for a cat, especially for him, who was recovering. The boy got up and said goodbye to the cat, saying he would go to the alley to feed the other cats, and asked him to eat everything. The cat, looking at the food in the bowls, imagined that the boy was right, as he had heard that human food was bad for cats. He, the great Kayden, was about to eat feline food. He thought he would try just a little to help with his recovery. However, after starting to taste that delicious feline food, with its sweet and aromatic notes, he couldn't stop eating. Kayden delighted in the food from the bowls. He ate so much that after eating, he could only lie on his back. Kayden, after eating all that feline food, refused to believe he had eaten on his own. And in his thoughts, he defended himself, saying it wasn't his fault. It was that fat cat that wouldn't stop eating. He was disappointed with the fragility of that body because he knew that if his enemies found him, he would be in deep trouble. Leaving the house very happy and excited was the boy. Kayden asked if he was going out. He replied that he was going to the veterinary center. The cat found it strange and asked the boy if he was going out at that hour. The boy said yes because he hadn't bought enough food. The boy asked Kayden if he would like to go with him. Kayden, frightened, asked the boy why he would want to go with him somewhere at that hour. The boy replied that if they went together, he wouldn't risk telling people that his cat could talk. The cat told the boy he would go with him only to make sure he kept his mouth shut. The boy was running with him outside, and he wasn't understanding anything up to that point. Kayden wanted to know what was happening and asked the boy to let him go. The boy replied that he couldn't because he was still injured. Kayden, scratching the boy, replied that he didn't want to be carried like a thing or like an ordinary cat. The fight was ugly. Kayden looked at the boy, who still didn't let him go. Kayden told the boy that he wouldn't go out in that undignified manner. Seconds later, the champion was declared. The boy placed Kayden inside his coat, his little face very happy. Kayden was feeling very happy and relieved inside the boy's coat. But he should keep in mind that he was a cat but not a cat. The boy continued walking through the streets at night with Kayden inside his coat, who at that moment wasn't finding it bad at all. They continued like this until they reached the veterinary center, where, greeting the veterinarian, The boy said he had brought the kitten for an exam. The cat realized at that moment that the stupid child had tricked the great Kayden. The veterinarian began the examination with the cat and asked Jiwoo what the cat's name was since he didn't remember seeing it there before. After hearing from the boy that the cat's name was Kayden, the veterinarian commented that for the appearance of that cat, the name was quite magnificent. The cat, in turn, only thought that he should indeed kill that veterinarian who kept examining him. The veterinarian examined the entire cat's body, the mouth, the ear, measured his temperature, and Kayden was annoyed by the embarrassment. The veterinarian told the boy that the cat only had a few scrapes, but the boy had already taken care of those. Hearing the veterinarian's words, the boy felt very relieved, knowing that the cat would now be fine. However, the cat, hearing the boy speak, didn't understand why he was still worrying about him. The veterinarian told the boy that, honestly, all that cat needed right now was a diet, and the cat still thought he should kill that veterinarian. As he said goodbye to the boy, the doctor mentioned that the cat was fine. The two walked through the deserted streets at night, with the boy feeling happy and very relieved. Suddenly, the cat heard something and asked the boy to stop for a moment, warning him that only monster cats lived in that region. Looking at a dark and empty alley, the boy found it very strange that the cat referred to monster cats. He had never heard of that before. However, upon observing the empty alley, the boy noticed that there really was a shadow there, which could indeed be a cat. Frightened by the appearance of that animal, the boy asked if that was the so-called monster cat, hugging his kitten tightly. The boy asked if that beast, which looked a lot like a tiger, was what they referred to as a cat. The boy noticed that the animal indeed exuded a different scent and, looking at the cat, asked what they should do. Kayden told the boy to run as fast as he could. The cat was surprised by the boy's skill in running, as he imagined the boy would just freeze up and be afraid. The boy kept running with his cat in his arms, running and dodging as much as possible from the tiger's attacks. Even while running and dodging, he couldn't avoid being hit by the enormous monster cat. Noticing that Jiwoo had been hit, Kayden asked if he was okay. The boy replied that he was. Kayden commented that it would be better to have a weapon. At that moment, the boy remembered that he had put a weapon in his pocket earlier. It was a stick with a soft puff at the tip. He threatened the big tiger, telling it not to come any closer. At this moment, the boy stood face to face with the big monster cat, pointing the stick with the cute little puff at the end. Kayden was on the ground next to the boy, watching the puff sway on the tip of the stick. Seeing that soft thing swaying on the tip of the stick, he wondered if this was the weapon the boy had managed to get. A few moments, the furious monster cat, which had been trying to devour them earlier, was now calm. So calm that the boy, who had both eyes closed earlier, opened one to see the monster cat's reaction. Seeing the cat swaying from side to play with the soft puff at the tip of the stick, he turned to Kayden and said that now was their chance to escape. However, he realized that the same effect that had affected the monster cat had also caught Kayden off guard. Kayden, when the human engaged in great battles, always left the enemy on the ground, admitting defeat. Comments like, "Kayden won again," and "How many were there?" were common. People would call him to join them. Others asked him to be their right hand. Many times they called him to be part of some plan to conquer the world. Others would kneel, asking him to be their leader. Kayden was snapped back to reality when he heard Jiwoo calling for him, asking what he was doing. The cat stopped playing with the plush on the tip of the stick and looked at the boy. Silence took over, and no one spoke again. The big cat seemed to be preparing. With a well-aimed leap, it managed to grab the plush, making Jiwoo very scared. The animal pulled so hard on the toy that it even managed to take the stick that was in the boy's hand along with it. Despite the boy shouting for it not to take it, the big cat landed on the other side of the alley. Now growling, the animal was in possession of their only weapon. The feline was furious in that corner, salivating and glaring at the two of them. The boy, looking at the big cat, thought about what he would do now that he had lost his weapon. The animal continued to be very angry, growling and salivating. At that moment, Jiwoo recognized a scar on the face of that big feline. He remembered where he had seen that enormous cat before. It was a normal cat when he saw it earlier. The feline, in anger, spat the toy to the other side, landing near the boy sitting on the ground, and it leaped at the boy, who reflexively dodged. Kayden, standing still, began to complain about the clumsy body and behavior of that cat that had transformed. Running, Jiwoo grabbed his cat and ran as fast as he could, increasing Kayden's fright. That big beast had lost sight of them and was breaking and tearing everything it saw in its path. It was growling through the alley, trying to find them, but it didn't see or hear them. Far away, the boy and his cat were, having descended several steps of a staircase. Everything seemed calm, and the boy decided to take a peek by going further up the stairs. He told Kayden that he was right. That was indeed a cat. He wanted to know why it was in the larger form of a normal cat. Kayden said it could be due to anger and a lack of snacks. Jiwoo thought it was safe to leave, but Kayden didn't think it was safe for other people. The boy didn't understand his depressed cat's reasoning, so he explained that the big cat would attack the next people it saw. The boy, surprised, said, "Now what?" He didn't know what to do because he hadn't thought about that before. The cat remained silent, watching quietly, and he told Jiwoo to call the appropriate authorities. The two of them looked at each other, and the boy seemed to be thinking of something. The boy, putting one of his hands on his head, said he had left his phone at home. Kayden said that then he couldn't help. The boy stated that it was just a matter of solving the problem, and that was exactly what they were going to do. Kayden wondered what on earth Jiwoo was talking about, and why he felt the need to do anything. The cat questioned the boy, who still couldn't just sit by, about what he thought he could do. The cat asked why the boy was still arguing. It wasn't his problem if someone got hurt or not. Staying silent and looking at the cat, he understood that the look on that child's face was serious. Watching from the top of the alley stairs, he told Kayden to go home before him. He would see what he could do about the other cat. He was sure that it was the same kitten from before, which was very cute and gentle. Kayden said it was okay if he was really going to do something or help. As he descended the stairs, the boy asked what Kayden had said. The cat explained that it would just be a little more, that he would give a small part of his powers to help. The boy cheered and asked if that kind of thing really existed. Kayden asked the boy to crouch down because he needed to look him in the eyes. The boy crouched, and Kayden, standing 2 steps above him, placed his paws on the boy's forehead. While he touched the boy with his paw, both remained silent, and they both quickly noticed the reaction. Still crouched down, the cat, with its paw on its forehead, began to release small sparks and light. In the alley, the cat on the upper step continued to transfer a bit of its power to Jiwoo. That wave of power was affecting the street lamps and the nearby houses. The boy was very satisfied and could feel the power coursing through his body, and even small sparks coming from his hands. The cat, very tired from transferring the power, explained that the sparks were because it had the power of lightning. Still on the last steps of the ladder, the boy was very pleased with the power, and said he would look for the big cat. However, Kayden warned him that it wouldn't be necessary, as the big cat was already at the top of the ladder. Very confident, the boy asked Kayden to stay behind him, as it could be very dangerous for him. Kayden was very upset after hearing what the boy said, as if he would run away because of some danger. Now, the cat was wondering why that child was suddenly so full of confidence. Jiwoo, silent, only observed the big cat. He asked if it was the same cat that had appeared at his house a few days ago. Despite the monstrous cat at the top of the ladder staring at them, the boy continued talking. The cat prepared and leapt decisively at the boy, who appeared to be unresponsive. Very scared, his cat, watching from the side, urged him to dodge as quickly as possible. The boy watched the wild animal's paw nearly reach his face. The giant cat's attack was precise, but still, it didn't hit the boy, who dodged almost reflexively. After that, both he and Kayden were scared by what had just happened. The enormous beast continued to launch several attacks towards the boy, who dodged each one. The cat, analyzing, realized that the boy wasn't dodging the attacks by mere luck. The boy was reading the cat's reactions and acting before it could hurt him. He attacked without even having a chance to stop for a moment. Still, he wasn't using the powers he had received. He kept dodging the huge cat and waiting for the right moment to use his powers. He couldn't waste the powers on an attack he wasn't sure would hit. The animal came full force at the boy, but that was when he was going to unleash the attack using his powers. The cat's eyes widened as it realized that wasn't the power it had given to the boy. Jiwoo managed to hit that huge beast squarely because it was no match for him. But the final attack would be the end for that great beast. With those blows from the boy, the cat realized he was a user of the speed power. And there was the boy descending from the skies for the perfect attack. Seconds before, he had apologized to Mr. Cat. His strike resulted in a huge flash, leaving him sitting exhausted on the ground and the beast unconscious. The cat, calling the boy, said it was curious about why he wanted so much to fight that battle. Walking over to the boy who was sitting on the ground and the other unconscious cat, the boy was very worried about whether the cat was dead or unconscious. A power surrounded the cat and slowly faded, revealing its original face. Now it was on the ground in its normal form, and the boy recognized it. The three left as quickly as possible, as people were starting to arrive due to the noise. Somewhere in the city, a man was jumping from building to building, stopping on top of one of them. He was worried because the device couldn't locate the species. It hadn't even been an hour since he had located the species somewhere nearby. Now he would have to activate the seal with his abilities, and that was precisely what he was trying to avoid. He had no choice. He wouldn't risk losing that opportunity if the experiment had been successful. Releasing his power, the man high up on the building began to summon the specimen, ensuring that wherever it was, it would return. A little distance from that place, the boy was at home, taking care of the injured animal. Kayden informed the boy that the cat was only slightly electrified. The boy wanted to take it to the vet. Cat didn't think it was a good idea. If the cat transformed again, what would happen at the hospital? The boy, looking at that small animal, knew his cat was right but was still concerned. "It's better this way. Stop complaining. He'll be fine," Kayden said to Jiwoo. For a moment, Kayden remained silent, looking at the animal on the sofa. He didn't know it could transform. He continued thinking that a regular cat wouldn't do that on its own. It seemed like an awakened being. The boy was trying to tell his cat his secret but couldn't find a way. Losing patience, the bicolor cat asked what he was trying to say. The boy was trying to explain what he had done in the fight against the striped kitten, and Kayden asked if it was about his speed. The boy confirmed and asked his cat to keep it a secret. Kayden was listening attentively. The boy continued, saying he wouldn't like others to know. The cat didn't like it at all and said not to go around telling people he had awakened abilities. Jiwoo didn't know what awakened abilities were and asked his cat what they were. The cat found it strange that he didn't know what they were since he was awakened. The boy was shocked to learn what it was. The bicolor cat observed the boy for a while in silence, just analyzing. It concluded that he really had no idea he was an awakened one, and said there were rare cases like his. Excited, the boy wanted to ask a question and even raised his hand to do so. He asked if he was something called an awakened one, and if that speed ability was something awakened people had. After these questions, Kayden knew it wouldn't be easy to explain all this to him. Taking a breath, he answered yes. The boy wanted to know if there were people like him, other awakened ones. His bicolor cat answered yes, and that he was looking at an awakened one right there. He could hardly believe his cat was also an awakened one. He asked if the cat had special abilities like him. Was that what the bicolor cat was saying? He asked if he really thought a normal person could transform into a cat like he did. The boy, having his cat's affirmative response, was stunned and very emotional, even going silent. The cat noticed the change in Jiwoo's face, who was now silent, especially since he never shut up. Moving to the side, he took a good look at the boy to make sure he was okay. Very emotional, the boy began to apologize for crying. He had always thought he was the only abnormal one. The cat asked if up until that moment, the boy hadn't told anyone about his special abilities. With the boy's affirmative response, the cat could understand him. Being awakened and wanting to live among others wouldn't be easy. He told the cat that even after his mother discovered his abilities, she asked him never to use them. He continued, saying he was always scared but didn't tell his mother to avoid worrying her. He imagined that if they found out, they might kidnap him and experiment on his body. His cat continued standing there, watching him and listening to his stories. In tears, he said he was happy to know there were others like him, not just Mr. Kayden. The bicolor cat, turning its face, commented that it also felt a certain relief. After these stories, the three remained silent in the room, Kayden facing Jiwoo, while the striped cat recovered on the sofa. The boy broke the silence, asking his bicolor cat to teach a bit more about the awakened ones. Kayden began explaining that people with special abilities are called ability users or awakened ones. He understood. It was like the heroes in movies. Depending on their abilities, they could do different things. Kayden explained that the core of his ability was moving at high speed, but he could do more with that speed. The boy asked if, over his life, his powers had become more powerful, and he explained that they had. Excited, he said that lately, he could use them for 3 to 5 seconds. The cat said it understood because he hadn't trained his abilities. He was trying to hide them. He was curious and asked if all awakened ones trained their abilities. Kayden replied that they did. Feeling a bit embarrassed, he said he still wanted to continue hiding his abilities. Watching the boy get embarrassed about wanting to hide his abilities, Kayden said he was a special case, and soon heard his stomach growling. The boy apologized for interrupting Kayden with the growling of his stomach and said he hadn't eaten since dinner. He asked for a moment to grab something to eat, leaving the room and going to the kitchen. He grabbed a slice of bread from the table, which was next to the room with no walls separating them. As he was about to bite into the bread, he noticed his cat watching him from the sofa. He turned to make sure it was really the cat, and saw the cat looking, both of them silent. He immediately put some kibble in the bowl so his cat could eat as well. Crouched down next to the cat's food bowl was Jiwoo. Realizing that his bicolor cat hadn't eaten either, Kayden wasn't satisfied. He needed to eat cat food again while Jiwoo was supporting him. Staring at the food bowl in silence, he seemed to be gathering the courage to eat. He realized he had no other option. He was hungry, and that was the only alternative. The boy also began eating his food. Sitting on the floor, eating his bread, he watched his cat eating its kibble, while the other cat was also recovering there. Slowly, an energy began to cover Jiwoo's neighborhood, gradually taking over the houses and streets. It was the ability of the man who was on top of the building searching for his specimen, the striped cat on the boy's sofa. Kayden, sensing something, quickly turned around. He was feeling better and managed to sense something coming. He felt that energy surrounding the house and knew it was bad. At the window, he confirmed it was energy and started to assess what it was. He was interrupted by a familiar sound, a powerful growl. Turning to the sofa, he saw the striped cat, which had now turned back into that furious beast. The boy also saw the large striped cat, which this time wasn't trying to attack them but was instead trying to escape. It knocked over everything in its path, looking for a way out, and when it found one, it leaped and took off, seeming to be in a hurry. This was unexpected and left both of them confused about what had made the striped cat become monstrous again. The boy, astonished, told Kayden that the cat had fled, and Kayden said it was impossible not to notice that. Kayden knew that the striped cat shouldn't be on its feet yet since it hadn't recovered. This had to do with that energy. He noticed that the boy was preparing for something, even putting on a cap. Suspicious, he asked Jiwoo what he was doing, even though he already had an idea of the answer. Putting the cap on his head, the boy replied that he had to find the beast cat to avoid hurting anyone. The cat wanted to know if the boy was going to hunt the monster cat again and warned that the first time was unavoidable. But now it wasn't. The boy cared about people, but what he really wanted was to help the striped kitten. He wasn't going to let anything happen. The cat observed the boy and was sure that if he left him alone, the situation would get much worse. So, he took a deep breath before telling the boy that he would go with him. He wanted to know why the striped cat had changed, and the boy was very happy about that. Seeing the boy's joy, the cat warned him not to misunderstand. He was not going because he cared about him. The two went outside, with the boy thanking the cat and saying he felt better with him. Outside, that strong energy still lingered, which had made the striped cat transform and run away. The boy, at full speed, was running to find the transformed cat, which represented a significant threat. He was carrying Kayden inside his jacket, who noticed that his movements were as good as before the fight. He continued talking to Jiwoo from inside the jacket, sure that speed could be awakened. Running, he had indeed noticed he was faster, and wanted to know about these other abilities. He explained that the parts of his body affected by movement would continue to develop, such as his nervous system. He was understanding his cat's explanation when Kayden asked him to turn left, and that's what he did at high speed, holding his cat inside the jacket. Kayden asked how long he could stay active. He replied that since it had been a few hours since he last ran, he thought he could last for 2 seconds. Kayden was analyzing the answer while being carried inside the jacket. Running, the boy asked about the direction to go, and how he knew which way to take. Kayden knew because parts of the energy presence that had surrounded the house were still in the air. His guess was that the incident was related to an awakened one, and that the monster cat was going to meet him. Amazed, the boy asked if it was another like the two of them. Kayden told him to get ready. It was all silent, but the bandages used in the feline's treatment were lying on the ground. The large cat was walking almost unable to, responding to the call of the awakened one who had summoned him. That man appeared in the shadows, saying that the specimen had shown up after hearing his call. Looking at the monster cat, he told it that it wouldn't be able to escape those cells in its current state, making the large cat remember the captivity and the bad man conducting experiments, using it as a guinea pig. Not understanding the specimen's reaction of not surrendering, even with the seal ensuring its obedience. The large cat showed it wasn't being fully controlled and growled at the man who was crouching in front of it. The man noticed the hostility and realized that the seal placed during the procedure had broken. Observing the specimen growling and staring at him, he saw that it had become stronger. For the victory of the awakened one observing, as an experiment had managed to awaken the cat. The boy arriving at the location pointed out by Kayden saw the striped cat he was searching for with a man, and showed Kayden where they were. His cat observed the scene, trying to recognize the man with the monster cat. He realized something was troubling him, which even scared the boy, making him tremble. Pulling Jiwoo to hide for now until they were sure of who it was. Hidden, Kayden took a good look, and seeing it too, observed with the boy that the striped kitten from before was there. As he looked, he only saw a man. The cat explained to him that it was an awakened one. But the boy, looking, saw nothing different about the man who was facing the cat he was searching for. Analyzing the man, the bicolor cat noticed the connection between them. He was convinced that the earlier energy was for a summon. Looking, he realized it wasn't one of the trackers searching for him, and felt relieved. From the way that man's powers flowed, he was only there for that large cat. The striped cat leaped towards the man. That enormous cat wanted to attack him. Noticing he was about to be attacked, the man extended one hand, freezing the cat in midair. Then he threw it against the wall. It was a strong specimen and didn't die easily. The monster cat, after hitting the wall, landed on its feet. It was badly injured and exhausted. Even so, that awakened man attacked him fiercely with his powers, asking if he was sure of himself. He threw him against the wall again. This time, he couldn't land on his feet, nor could he get up. Even with that man ordering him to get up, the striped cat was too injured and couldn't move anymore. A little further ahead, Jiwoo saw what the man was doing to the cat. With him, Kayden saw how skilled that man was. Undoubtedly a very strong awakened. Kayden noticed in the subtle movements of his hands that he had such control over his own powers. The man was still not satisfied and asked the cat lying on the ground if that was all it had. With the striped cat on the ground, hurt and smaller, it was still angry. The man made his assessments and realized that the cat had gained greater physical strength and was stronger than an ordinary cat. Looking at the cat lying on the ground, the man kicked it and said that it had not been defeated yet. The boy, adjusting his cap, didn't know what was happening, but he wasn't going to just stand by. He was going to save the striped cat. Kayden tried to persuade him, saying that the man was an awakened and warned that Jiwoo was no longer in the same situation as when he fought with the cat. Jiwoo didn't care if the man was awakened or not. He knew that no one had the right to do what that guy was doing to the kitten. "Stop being naive," said the angry cat. "Kayden, what do you think you can do?" Jiwoo was listening to him and was aware of the risk he was about to face. Kayden spoke a lot, trying to convince him, saying it was impossible to win and that he should get that into his head. He watched the boy silently for a brief moment and even thought he had managed to convince him. The striped cat got up and stood in front of that man, who was surprised to see that it was still able to snarl so fiercely. The man looked at the specimen and asked why it wasn't fleeing, saying that trying to attack him was disappointing. He was still speaking when, seeing the opportunity, Jiwoo moved very quickly towards the cat. He crouched quickly in front of the awakened, grabbed the badly injured feline, and the man hadn't even seen him arrive. He was furious with him for trying to steal his experiment like that, and worse, catching him off guard. He launched a wave of power towards the boy who was trying to steal his experience. However, before it could reach him, the boy had already left the scene right before his eyes. He searched all around and couldn't see him. He was there and disappeared in less than a second. That man was fearing he had been found by a tracker. He knew he shouldn't have spread all that energy. He thought he had been discovered and needed to leave before the other trackers arrived. Now the place was empty. Jiwoo fled with Kayden and the striped cat while the man fled from the potential trackers. Far from there, the boy was running with the cat in his arms, and Kayden, furious with him, heard that they had succeeded. Running, Kayden complained, and Jiwoo looked at the unconscious striped cat in his arms. Smiling, Jiwoo didn't care, as he wouldn't leave the striped cat with that man even if he was dead. He had now managed to annoy his bicolor cat, who looked at him with reproachful eyes. Jiwoo replied, looking at him, that he had to try. He couldn't just stand still. The cat running watched. He was serious, and the worst part was that he was serious. With the striped cat wrapped in his coat, All smiles, Kayden told him to stop being an idiot and to stop laughing. Drooping his ears, he realized that the boy was hopeless. But who would have thought they actually succeeded? The boy, even knowing he annoyed his cat, told him he was very happy at that moment. Jiwoo said that, on that day, he had learned about the powers he had wanted to hide so much, and, shortly after that, had the strength and determination to act. Looking at the striped kitten in his arms and running to his house with Kayden, the cat told that wasn't a reason to be proud. Now, at the awakened man's hideout, who had also fled, he was enraged. That specimen was very important. Turning to Woon, he said he thought there were trackers on their trail and that he had taken the important experiment. Listening to the master's instructions, Woon, a very young and obedient boy, was attentive. Putting his paw on the body of the striped cat, Kayden was trying to heal it and ease its suffering with his abilities. Despite his efforts, the animal's body was very injured. Its recovery could take longer than expected. The boy looked closely at Kayden caring for the striped cat, which was lying on the couch and everything it had been through. Kayden finishing the treatment, he removed his paw from the striped cat's body. Had done his part. Now it was just waiting for recovery. That cat had gone through the awakening process and was now strong enough to survive. The boy was happy that the striped cat was also like them and now thought it was cooler to call him a smart kitten. Looking at the kitten, Kayden imagined that it couldn't be a full awakening, but its body emitted the right aura. He continued analyzing the smart kitten and remembered past cases of animal experiments. So this cat was the first successful one, which meant it was the work of that man, and he knew they had gotten involved in something dangerous. Seeing his dear cat friend standing still for a while, he asked Kayden if he was okay, as he didn't seem to be. With a swat on the head, Kayden replied that of course he wasn't okay and they had gotten involved in something complicated. Jiwoo said he had also thought about that, but what could he do? He couldn't ignore the kitten and let it die. He said he rescued the kitten. It wasn't the case. The problem arose when he decided to confront the man. And to make matters worse, he forcibly took his cat. That man would definitely come after him. Jiwoo, who only looked at him, slightly hunched, was very scared when he started shouting. He tried to explain to the angry bicolor cat that he had only saved the kitten and hadn't angered the man. Kayden was really upset with that idiot who had no idea of the mess he had just gotten into. Seeing the cat once again standing there with an angry look, Jiwoo glanced to the side of the cat to see, but he remained lost in his thoughts. The cat knew that to cover up the case, they wouldn't hesitate to kill him. It was a lot of bad luck for something like this to happen to him, who had just discovered his powers and got into this situation. In reality, he still needed to be treated like a normal human. After all, it wasn't like anything would change if he explained. The boy looked at the cat sitting on the couch with drooping ears. He asked Kayden if he was angry and said he was very sorry for making things up in his head. The cat yelled at the boy, who wasn't acting out of concern for him, scaring the boy. He continued talking with all that anger to Jiwoo, saying it was indeed dangerous because the situation was risky. Pointing his paw at him, he asked if he understood what he had just explained. Whatever Kayden said, just be careful from now on. The result of your actions made you gain an enemy. Jiwoo laughed at the situation. The cat could only think about how this naivety could be problematic. Suddenly, the alarm on the cell phone started ringing. Time had passed, and they didn't even realize it. Jiwoo, looking at the phone, saw that it was already 7 in the morning. The cat didn't understand why 7 o'clock was so surprising. As he hurried to get ready to leave, Kayden wanted to know where Jiwoo was going and mentioned that he hadn't finished talking. The cat looked incredulous, not knowing that Jiwoo was a student and finding it strange. Jiwoo explained that he had stayed up all night taking care of the cat's situation, already putting food in the bowl. Leaving quickly, he said he had left a bunch of food, so they shouldn't forget to eat. Standing at the door, he remembered something important and asked his cat. Noticing the boy's excitement when he approached the door, the two-colored cat became curious to know what was going on. Looking at Kayden, his two-colored cat, the boy asked what they would do if the smart kitten woke up while he wasn't there. The two looked at the unconscious cat, and Kayden said that, in that state, it would be difficult, since he didn't remember being much weaker than the last time they faced each other. Besides, Kayden continued, what made Jiwoo think he was capable of defeating him? Very proud of the cat, Jiwoo thought Kayden was incredible, and the cat began to say that he had heard those words countless times in his life. He didn't know the cat was so strong. He remembered that now Kayden was a fat cat. Saying goodbye, he ran off to avoid being late for school, but returned because he had something important to ask. The cat was already returning to his position at the door, calling the cat, who couldn't believe the boy had already come back with more questions. Jiwoo asked if he would still be there when he returned. He hadn't been apart from him since finding him in the alley. He said that his body wasn't well yet, so he should stay a little longer, at least until he got better. Watching him run off again, yelling for Kayden to stay and promising that he would. The house was now silent after he left, and the two colored cats stood in the middle of the room, staring at the door. Since Jiwoo had begged so much, Kayden decided to stay a little longer, talking to himself as he passed by his reflection. He stopped and stared at that reflection of the two-colored cat, wondering what kind of nonsense it was. His thoughts were interrupted by the unwelcome arrival of 3 alley cats, and now he wanted to know what was going on. They started approaching him with unfriendly looks, clearly not pleased with his presence. They decided to rub against him, sniffing, and Kayden found it all very annoying. One of them moved toward the food bowl, and he told them not to steal the food from the great Kayden. Suddenly, all of them bristled with fear. It was the two-colored cat releasing a powerful aura that illuminated the area. The 3 alley cats huddled together, trembling in fear of the cat. He remembered the words Jiwoo had said when he told him that he had only found him because the cats had led him to Kayden. He stopped emitting that energy, walked past the cats, and looked for a place to lie down. The cats watched to see if the furious cat wasn't going to attack them, and they started eating cautiously. They looked at Kayden, lying on his back, and occasionally he looked back at them too. His stomach was growling with hunger because he hadn't eaten and had left his food for the other cats. Looking up at the table, he noticed that there was a canned cat food there. Grabbing the can and lying down with it on the floor, he examined it, wondering how he would open it. Looking at his claws, he had a brilliant idea and used them to open the can. The big cat managed to open the can of treats, and the smell filled the air, making him happy. However, the smell also caught the attention of the 3 cats behind him, who were eating from his bowl. Those 3 cats watched Kayden with admiration, seeing him open that can. Some time passed, and the boy was already back home. Excited, he announced to his cat Kayden that he had returned. But he was very startled to see several cans of that treat open and all the cats lying down, asleep. He looked at each can, wondering how they could have managed to open the container, and he noticed that all the cans had a lateral cut. Even so, he couldn't connect those lateral cuts with the cats lying on the floor. In his childhood, many questions ran through his mind, and his mother tried to answer them as best she could. He always asked if it was his fault for being different, and his mother would say it wasn't anyone's fault. But he wanted to know, if it wasn't his fault, why were they always running away? Many times, his mother didn't know what to say and stayed silent, and the boy's questions kept coming. He wanted to know why no one wanted to be his friend. For that question, his mother had no answers either. She didn't always have answers for all his questions. At those moments, she would hug him, trying to comfort him with a hug. She hugged him as tightly as she could, trying to cheer her son up. He realized that not even his mother really knew what was happening to him. He would always watch other kids his age playing from a distance, as they didn't like his presence. He was always alone. No one approached him, thinking he was different. But one day, someone noticed him and started looking at him differently, without fear. He looked to the side and saw that it was a kitten looking at him with affection, and the gentle kitten, approaching him, rubbed against him and meowed close to the boy. At first, the boy was scared of the little animal, but over time he got used to it. The teacher called his name in the classroom, as he was sleeping at his desk. But he remained asleep, and now he was there, standing in front of a beautiful kitten. He looked at the cat, and the cat looked back at him, and he decided to place his hand on the cat's head. He reached out, hesitated, until he finally gathered the courage and petted the cat. Feeling the soft fur and hearing the cat purring was the best remedy he could have hoped for. He was smiling at last. The boy who was always sad in the corners now had a friend and was happy. The boy and his cat were together and chatting excitedly. Once again, a firm voice called his name and asked if he was really sleeping in class. Startled, he raised his head, blinking and trying to figure out what was happening. The teacher, annoyed, told him that he tried to let it go, but since Jiwoo had slept in class the previous day too, he couldn't anymore. Still a bit dazed, he asked the teacher if the class had ended, as it seemed like he was hearing the bell. The teacher confirmed that the class was over, and the bell had just rung. Teacher asked if something was wrong and said that if Jiwoo had a problem, he could talk to him. Jiwoo understood that the class had ended, so he got up and left. He ran out of the classroom, telling the teacher he was already leaving everyone in the room shocked. The teacher looked back, surprised, not knowing what was going on with that boy who had always been so good. Hearing his name, even so, the boy didn't stop running. He ran as fast as he could to leave. He rushed out, all excited, because he imagined that Kayden was waiting for him. He was in such a hurry to get home that he didn't even notice a boy in front of him and bumped into him. Awkwardly, he apologized to the boy for hitting him, as he had been distracted, thinking about the cat. He tried to explain that it happened because he was in a rush, but the other boy looked at him indifferently and said nothing. Jiwoo is completely ignored by that boy, who simply walks away and leaves. He lingers a little longer, watching the boy depart, looking at him from behind. He thought it was strange the boy didn't say anything, and if he remembered correctly, he was a transfer student from his class. Shouting at the boy, who was already walking away, he apologizes and says he really needs to leave, then runs off. Through the hallways, the boy walks slowly, as if in no hurry to get anywhere. That boy, named Woon, works for the awakened one who was using the cat as an experiment. Hearing his cell phone ring, he answers and hears his name followed by the question of where he was, coming from his boss. He responds that he was at school, and the boss becomes very angry with him, saying they had a lot to do. In that hallway, listening to the boss's complaints, he looks at the court and sees people playing, but he wasn't like them. The boss tells the boy that trackers are looking for them, and yet he keeps going there. He also tells the boy to stop wasting time with frivolities and to return immediately to their hideout. He replies, "Yes, sir." The call ends, and he continues walking down the hallway. From a distance, he sees happy people, enjoying themselves with friends, a happiness he could not experience. With that sight, he adjusts his glasses on his face and keeps walking slowly. Meanwhile, at Jiwoo's house, there were 5 cats, the 3 alley cats, Kayden, and the striped cat with powers. The striped cat wakes up and notices the environment. He had been there before, on that same couch. Looking closely, he sees 3 cats playing that weren't there the last time. They notice that the other cat had woken up. The 3 cats, trying to interact with him, approach. One even meows near the striped cat, who flattens his ears. As one of the alley cats tries to touch the striped cat while meowing, he is left alone. The striped cat growls, scaring the curious kittens, who were just checking on him. The striped cat bristles, rising from the couch and continuing to growl at the kittens. The 3 run away in fear, huddling together. The striped cat was recovering, but still, he frightened them. The striped cat begins gathering energy to attack the kittens huddled in the corner. He approaches them, growling loudly, making the 3 tremble with fear. The striped cat paces back and forth, growling and preparing for an attack. Then, he leaps at the 3 defenseless alley kittens with full force. However, his attack is stopped midair when Kayden strikes him in the face with his paw. Kayden was also in the air, charging at the striped feline to protect his alley cats. He owed them that much. After finishing his strike, Kayden watches as the striped cat collapses unconscious on the couch, to the delight and relief of the 3 kittens. Having knocked the striped cat out, Kayden, glaring at him angrily, asks what he thought he was doing in his house. The other cats went wild with excitement. They all liked him and were there because of him. Now it was a matter of admiration. 2 of the 3 cats began rubbing against him, meowing at him, while the other was poking the striped cat to make sure he was truly unconscious. The cats continued to fawn over Kayden, worshipping him like he was king of the place, until they heard a voice saying, "I'm back." It was the boy all the cats loved. At that moment, they stopped adoring Kayden and rushed to get pets from Jiwoo. He was happy to see them there and began asking how their day had been. From a distance, the bicolor cat watched the boy and the cats. Kayden seemed annoyed by the attention the boy was giving the other cats, but he didn't get close either. The boy, looking at the bicolor cat, asked if they had eaten while he was away. He told him that, even if he didn't like cat food, he should force himself to eat at least the wet food. Looking at the empty cans, Jiwoo realized they had eaten well and he had worried for no reason. With the 3 cats still around him, and Kayden in a bad mood, Jiwoo glanced at the sofa to check on the striped cat. Rising towards the couch, Jiwoo said that the striped cat was the one he was most worried about. He felt sad that the cat hadn't woken up yet. Jiwoo asked if the cat hadn't regained consciousness at all, but Kayden avoided the question. When asked directly, Kayden finally revealed that the striped cat had woken up once but didn't specify how. Overjoyed, with happiness shining in his eyes, the boy wanted to know when that had happened. Kayden, the bicolor cat, responded that it was just before he returned home. Now Jiwoo felt a bit more relieved. For him, it was a great relief that the cat had woken up, even if only for a brief moment. The cat, however, mentioned that he had something to ask Jiwoo for a long time, but it seemed like he wasn't the owner of the 3 kittens. He concluded by asking, "If you're not their owner, why do you have so many cat things in the house?" Said that he might be disappointed by the answer. Wisely, Kayden responded that he'd be the judge of that. A bit embarrassed, Jiwoo looked at the kittens and began speaking. He said that when he was younger, he had no friends, and Kayden could already imagine why. Jiwoo's family was always moving around, so he had no way to maintain friendships, especially since he had to stay distant from other kids. So, he was very lonely. The first friend he ever had was a cat, and he said this while picking up one of the 3 alley kittens. The kitten, like his first friend, was a street cat, but one day that cat disappeared. Jiwoo searched until he couldn't anymore, but sadly, his family moved away from that place. Looking at the unconscious striped cat on the couch, Jiwoo continued, saying he bought toys and food for the cats, all the ones who lived there. With one of the kittens in his arms, he admitted that it was kind of silly and smiled at Kayden, who remained silent. Flicking his ears in indifference, the bicolor cat said, "It's not a big deal." Changing the subject, Jiwoo mentioned that he was really tired and had even slept during class. His cat explained that it was because he still hadn't fully recovered. "Oh, so that's it," Jiwoo replied. He had thought it strange that he was still so exhausted and hadn't regained his energy. On the floor, with some cats stretching out and already setting up a pillow to prepare for a nap, Jiwoo called out to Kayden, looking at his bicolor cat, and told him he was really happy he was still there. He remembered that Kayden had said he would stay until he recovered and asked him to promise again that he would stay. The cat stared at him, said nothing, then, as Jiwoo was getting ready to lie on the couch, told him to forget about it and just sleep. Jiwoo lay on the floor with his head on the pillow, each of the 3 alley cats in their own corner, the striped cat on the couch, and Kayden on another. When Kayden turned to check if Jiwoo was alright, he felt upset. 2 of the alley cats were curled up next to him, sleeping very close, while the other was playing with some toy fish. Extremely exhausted, the awakened was repeatedly trying to redo the experiment that had succeeded before. He could try anything, but he wasn't achieving the same success as before. Even using the same drugs, the effect was very different. He asked Won if he was sure that all those animals he had used as test subjects were really dead. Won replied that he had checked each one twice every hour. Putting his hands on his head, the man looked desperate to make sure everyone had died. The young man, aware of the awakened's strong temper, remained silent, waiting for the next orders. The man, crouched and looking at the cells where the lifeless animals were, said that soon they would come looking for results, and that there were trackers. He stayed silent, with his hands on his head, crouched near the cells. He was sweating and looked more desperate with every moment. He ordered Won to fetch more test subjects so they could start the procedures again. He was going to redo the tests. Serious, the young man replied that those were the last animals they had in stock. The man, still crouched, looked at him with utter contempt. There was hatred in his gaze, as if blaming him for the lack of test subjects. He stood up, very angry, and asked if they had used them all, then go get more. The man was desperate and couldn't afford to waste another minute. The young man reported that people were starting to get suspicious in the neighborhood, and with so many disappearances, the police were already on alert. The monstrous man told the young man to shut up and struck him, venting all his anger and frustration. His thoughtless attack hit the young man's face directly, who didn't even move or utter a single word. The blow made his face bleed. Even so, nothing could be heard from Won's mouth. The old awakened then asked the young man whom he thought he was talking to. With a respectful voice, the young man said he was very sorry. Looking at the young man, he shouted that if there was no way to get them in the neighborhood, he should go to the more distant areas but bring them to him. Furious, he He said that the young man really had to detail everything for him to do something right. Turning his back to Win, he called him a useless fool. The young man remained standing. The old desperate man thought that the young man had no idea how hard it was to make any progress in that type of experiment. Returning to Jiwoo's house, which was in complete silence, the striped cat was still unconscious on the sofa after the paw to the face it received. The boy, very tired, was sleeping on the floor near the sofa where the striped cat was, and the alley cats were lying with him. On the other sofa, Kayden was concentrated, meditating to check his strength and energy. He was doing exercises to increase his power. His energy was low. Despite his best efforts, he couldn't gather much energy. His body wasn't recovering. He slowly opened his eyes, stretched his limbs, and sharpened his claws. That cat form was still bothering him. His strength wasn't returning. Now, he wasn't recovering at all. And the worst part was that he had used powers beyond the body's capacity. He remembered that it could have been because he had transferred some of his powers to a boy moments before his fight against the monster cat. He thought of Jiwoo's cheerful face, and would do it again to keep him safe. That boy was always very kind to him and everyone around him. There was no other option at that moment. If he hadn't helped, who knows? He remembered the awakened and knew that the bastard would still cause problems. He wouldn't stay calm after being robbed and challenged. Not just anyone would have the courage to conduct a strictly banned experiment in the awakened world. He thought that if he were lucky, the old man would flee soon. Otherwise, he would go after them. And he began to observe that the boy was tossing and sweating, but was trapped in a very bad nightmare. He couldn't stop thinking that Jiwoo was in great danger now, with that crazy man out there after his experiment. Observing the boy tossing, sweating, and appearing to breathe with difficulty, the cat was sure it was indeed a very bad nightmare. And he thought it was no wonder, having discovered the awakened world and having to face one of them. Calling the cat by name, he warned that he wasn't breathing anymore. When the boy said he couldn't breathe and that something was squeezing him, the cat remembered to say that he was on top of his stomach. After the other cats looked at him and realized that he was the cause of the boy's difficulty in breathing, he was sweating with embarrassment. Widening his eyes, he got off the boy's stomach, trying to adjust while the boy still felt the effects of all that weight on his chest. The boy was sitting, gasping for air and breathing with great difficulty, while the cat, sitting close to him with drooping ears, thought about how he ended up on top of him. The boy told the cat about the terrible nightmare, saying that someone was on top of him trying to strangle him. The cat, at this moment, looked at him with a terrible expression. Looking at the cat, the boy found the cat's reaction strange to the nightmare description. The cat became furious and turned his face to the other side. The boy said he still felt the weight on his chest. The cat retorted, saying that he knew it was just a nightmare due to the things happening to him in recent days. Jiwoo commented that the things he had said wouldn't leave his mind, and the cat also remembered the experiment he had stolen from the awakened. The boy, very sad and discouraged after that scare of thinking he was really being strangled, said he also remembered that. The cat, with a lot of irony, said he didn't know the boy had heard him, because it didn't seem like he was laughing at that moment. The cat looked at the boy and sighed deeply, thinking about all the consequences of the boy's thoughtless actions. He put his hand on his face and scratched with 1 or 2 fingers, looking at the cat and imagining he had figured everything out. He looked at Kayden with a look of tenderness and thanked him for being so concerned about him. He continued by saying that he knew he should feel bad because of the many problems for the cat, but still, he didn't know why he felt good. The cat's first reaction was to stay silent and visibly emotional. He was happy, but didn't show it, knowing that the boy was grateful. But it didn't last long, and the cat became furious, shouting at the boy to shut up and saying who told him he was worried about him. He made it clear that he wasn't worried about him, as he didn't have the time the boy had. He was only thinking about himself. The boy stayed quietly in a corner, observing the cat and wondering if he had really misunderstood. The cat wanted to say some things to him that he had also been thinking about for some time. It was a way to effectively increase his skills, to make him stronger and more prepared for any eventuality. Going down to the basement to start the training, the boy asked the cat if it was really possible to do that. The cat became angry, telling him that that was what he was saying. Sitting on a sofa in the basement, the cat said that this room could serve for the training. The cat informed the boy to prepare himself because they were going to start the training, and it would be good for him. He said that until that moment, the boy had been using his awakened abilities blindly, and could develop them with unregulated use. He mentioned that if the boy used the method he was going to teach, his abilities would become better and greater, allowing him to control his powers. He also made it clear that things don't happen immediately. Sometimes it could take months, or even decades. He said that abilities took time to develop fully. He commented that factors like method, training, capacity, and talent would have a significant influence. The boy then asked if it was possible that he might not develop anything. The cat said he wasn't sure. It would depend on his talents. He explained that developing skills was one thing, and using them efficiently was another. The boy asked how long it took Kayden to achieve that. Proud of himself, the cat responded that the boy was talking about something he had created for himself. He asked the boy to come a little closer to the sofa where the cat was, as he needed to be near him and look into his eyes. Then, he did almost like before, placing his paw on the boy's chest and began listening to the heartbeat. Afterwards, he started gathering energy and gradually surrounding the boy with it. The boy thought it was like the last time when the cat had given him part of his powers. Kayden asked the boy to listen carefully and explained that the roots of awakened abilities were gathered in the heart. He said he would insert his own energy into the boy's heart to facilitate the circulation of his own energy, which would help the boy use his powers better. He asked the boy to always remember this, and he replied that he would, sir, and would remember the words. He warned that he was going to start, and continued to gather his energy in the boy's heart, more and more. The boy began to feel a slight pain, as if being lightly electrocuted. Kayden gradually increased the intensity. Knowing what he was doing, he increased it a little more but was going slowly, as he wasn't in a hurry. The technique involved a little energy at a time. He was moving to a high level of energy. As the boy's body adapted, he increased the amount of electricity passing through him. At this moment, he realized that Jiwoo was feeling a lot of pain and asked him to endure it, knowing that this was the way. The boy was coping very well so far and was increasing the brightness of the light surrounding him, conducting the electricity until he got used to it. Little by little, the boy was engulfed by flashes of light. Now, the boy was completely enveloped by that energy and light and was very tired. The cat was also very tired and said it would be very difficult to repeat all that for now. The boy, noticing how tired the cat was concerned about what might happen if he repeated this effect for several months. By moving his arm, he managed to gather energy in his hands and, very happy, asked Kayden if this was what he had just shown him. The cat, very tired and feeling depleted, was still astonished to see that the boy had learned so quickly. He was happy because the boy could move his energy just as the cat had taught him, and happily asked if that was how he did it. Kayden, seeing him gather his energy on his own after having taught him just once, was puzzled. Back in the room, the boy and the cat are meditating to master the technique that Kayden had taught in the basement. Jiwoo, being very disciplined, managed to stay focused during the meditation. The meditation would help him better concentrate his energy. Completely focused on using the technique that Kayden taught, he was already able to move his energy. The cat observed that even though the concentrated energy was minimal, he was managing it. Even with Kayden having transferred energy to him, the results were impressive. Thinking he wasn't getting results, Jiwoo interrupted his meditation. He was unsure if he was doing it right as the cat had taught, but the cat warned that things would be difficult. Honestly, the cat found it strange that the technique had given Jiwoo the abilities on a silver platter. Still, the boy was saddened because he thought he would be able to feel the energy moving through his body as he had in the basement, which made him think he lacked talent. The sound of the alarm on his cell phone interrupted their conversation. Realizing he was late, he rushed up the stairs. Then he dashed down the same stairs like a madman, searching for the cat's food. Once he found the food package, he began to serve the bowls for Kayden and the striped cat. The bowl for the bicolor cat was full and there were some kibbles scattered around it. The same was true for the striped cat's bowl. In a hurry, he said goodbye to Kayden and mentioned he would leave food for the 3 alley cats in the backyard. With the boy already gone, the cat remained in the room, staring at the door. Sitting on the carpet in the room, the cat sighed deeply. He grumbled while looking at his bowl, noting that the boy never remembered his own food. He recalled when Jiwoo claimed not to have talent. Kayden knew that the amount of energy was too small for the boy to perceive, but he was certain he was already able to concentrate it in his heart. It was the first time he had seen someone make such immediate progress, besides himself. Licking his paw while thinking about these facts, he realized that his method was indeed effective. He noticed that he had never taught or even shown the technique to anyone. He realized it was he who had done that with Jiwoo and even made a way for him to feel his own energy throughout his body. And he wasn't surprised to find out that the boy wasn't a genius. With a proud demeanor, he celebrated because he knew he was the great Kayden, the extraordinary one. His joy was short-lived as the 3 alley cats suddenly appeared, running by him at full speed. Kayden, very annoyed to see that they had already finished their own food, called them idiots. The 3 were heading straight for Kayden's food bowl, and Kayden warned them not to even think about it. The large bicolor cat had a very serious expression, glaring at the 3 alley cats. When he realized they understood perfectly what he was saying. Even so, one of them started circling Kayden's bowl again, taking advantage of the moment when Kayden was staring at the striped cat lying on the sofa. He was remembering the awakened one who was doing experiments to achieve a forced awakening. He barely managed to finish his thought as the cats began meowing, and one even dared to rub against Kayden. The alley cats gathered around Kayden to pet him while one of them kept watch over the food bowl. Unable to withstand the pressure, the bicolor cat gave up the food so that the alley cats would leave him alone. Now we are in a school building, specifically in Jiwoo's classroom. Yawning, Jiwoo was relieved not to have arrived late. He was very sleepy and looked tired due to having slept very little in those days. In fact, many things had been happening since Kayden entered his life. Jiwoo preferred the activity of being with Kayden over being alone. The teacher had to intervene, asking him to wake up immediately. The teacher was concerned because lately, all Jiwoo did in class was sleep. The boy woke up, dazed, looking around trying to understand, as he had spaced out in his thoughts for just a bit. He was very startled to realize that the class had already ended, and the teacher informed him that he had been sleeping since the beginning. The teacher didn't even know what to do with him, as the boy was usually a model student. The teacher changed the subject and asked if anyone had seen the student Woon, as he had been absent that day and wasn't answering his phone. Jiwoo only realized when the teacher mentioned Woon that he had been absent, and saw that he still hadn't made any friends. Quietly, he observed Woon's empty desk beside him. The school building was very large, and it was getting late as the students were heading home. Most of them left with their friends, some alone, but all were heading home. Jiwoo was very excited because he knew for sure that Kayden was waiting for him again. But he was also worried if the other little kitten had woken up. He was walking when something caught his attention. Stopping to look, he noticed some boys bothering Woon. They seemed to be looking for something in his backpack. They rummaged through it, and threw all its contents on the ground. One of them commented that the backpack was full of cat food and jokingly said it should be for him to eat. Even with his backpack overturned and hearing the boys' taunts, Woon remained calm. Jiwoo, from a distance, asked what Woon was doing there. He was watching the boys in the alley and realized his classmate was being harassed. The boys in the alley didn't like Jiwoo's presence and told him not to get involved. Somewhat flustered, Jiwoo said he couldn't avoid getting involved since that was his classmate and pointed to Woon. This made the 3 boys who were looking for trouble face him challengingly. One of them approached and asked what a weakling like him could do. The boy tried to strike Jiwoo but couldn't, due to Jiwoo's exceptional speed. Unable to land even a single blow, the boy would get frustrated. Agitated, the boy asked Jiwoo if he was actually dodging. Not convinced that he couldn't land a hit, the boy continued trying, and another boy went to help him. The leader of the group watched the 2 trying to hit Jiwoo and realized they couldn't. Despite their lack of success, the 2 kept trying to hit Jiwoo. Very intelligent, our protagonist noticed people passing by and commenting on the fight. He showed it to the other boys. Seeing this, their leader told them to stop embarrassing themselves. Passing close to Jiwoo, the leader made it clear that he knew he was the boy who he warned Jiwoo to keep his eyes open. The leader of the gang warned that if he saw Jiwoo again, things would go badly for him. After being threatened, Jiwoo stood there watching the boys leave with a look of not fully understanding. Woon got up after putting his belongings back in his backpack, and silently listened to Jiwoo asking if he was okay. He heard but didn't answer, just passed by Jiwoo without saying anything. Jiwoo saw him pass by but didn't understand why Woon was like that. Stood there for a few seconds thinking about it. Not understanding, he started to follow Woon, asking him several questions like why he hadn't gone to school and why there was a lot of cat food in his backpack. Reaching a certain point in their paths where they would take different directions, Jiwoo told him his way was the other direction. Woon continued walking without paying attention to him. Still, Jiwoo said goodbye, waiting a bit to see the reaction of what he considered to be his new friend. Not getting any reaction from Woon, he turned around and went as fast as possible to his house. At that pace, he arrived quickly at home. Opening the door happily, he loudly announced to Kayden that he had arrived. Jiwoo greeted the 3 alley cats. He petted each one and asked if they had seen Kayden. He thought his friend might be upstairs, so he went up the stairs to check. He opened the door cheerfully, calling for Kayden and asking where he might be. Seeing the attic empty, he realized Kayden wasn't there. Even not seeing him, he continued searching everywhere to find him. He was very sad when Jiwoo went down the stairs to search a bit more. He looked around the living room and the sides to see if he could find Kayden. Not finding him, he stopped and sadly thought that he might have left. Downcast and thoughtful, he was very sad to imagine that Kayden might be leaving. The alley cats were around the boy, meowing and seeing his sadness. Jiwoo was completely disheartened and couldn't imagine his friend could do that to him. Still standing, he even clenched his fist in anger or some other feeling. In a fit of madness, the boy began to shout how Kayden could leave without telling him. The cat was listening to the boy scream, even after asking Kayden to stay until he got better. Even if there was an emergency, he could have at least informed before leaving. Kayden, despite being in a feline body, was still human and had his needs. He didn't respond to the boy as he was in the bathroom. Jiwoo, after realizing that Kayden hadn't left, was in the room with him apologizing and said he had lost his mind for a moment. He thought the cat had disappeared and felt very sorry for the confusion, promising that it wouldn't happen again. He kept asking the cat for forgiveness, but the cat didn't respond. Eventually, after much insistence from the boy, the cat replied that it was okay and he could stop now. Happy and relieved, Jiwoo asked if the cat had forgiven him. Kayden replied that it wasn't that serious, and it was ridiculous that they were still talking about it. The boy scratched his head, looking at the cat as if he felt guilty. The situation worsened when the boy asked if Kayden had finished what he started in the bathroom. Not believing the boy's audacity, the cat, Sarah, raised one of its paws. With the other paw, it grabbed the boy by the shoulder, ready to punch him since he was already sitting down. Terrified, Jiwoo begged the cat to lower its paw. Looking at his cat with affection, he said he was very happy that it was just a misunderstanding. The cat was still in a punching position but seemed to be having doubts, so it just sighed or let go and turned its back to him. Jiwoo watched the cat from behind and looked very happy. A noise caught their attention. It was the cat rustling on the sofa. Both looked immediately at the sofa where the striped cat was and realized it was starting to regain consciousness. The cat lifted its head and managed to open its eyes, though it was clear it was dazed. Excited, the boy told Kayden that the cat had woken up. The 3 of them stared at each other, but Kayden was not happy at all. The striped cat took a while to realize it had woken up, but once it did, it stood up on the sofa, and its tail was raised in an attack position. The striped cat looked at them and growled. The 2 looked back at the cat silently without moving. However, the striped cat remembered Kayden bringing his paw down on its face. It was so scared that it decided to pretend to forget. Looking at Kayden, the striped cat began to groom itself. That was all it was doing at the moment, trying not to attract Kayden's attention. The tabby cat decided to take a full bath on the sofa, and the boy and Kayden just watched. Kayden asked Jiwoo if he knew why the striped cat was acting like that. Before Kayden could finish speaking, the boy had his hand on the striped cat. He grabbed it by the middle and lifted it off the sofa. He sat with it on the carpet of the room and seemed very happy. Looking at the cat, Jiwoo told it that he was very happy, and the cat seemed to be paying attention to him. It did not react when the boy started petting it. Jiwoo asked Kayden if it was okay to take the striped cat to the vet. Trying to convince Kayden, he showed the kitten and said that now it was calm and he thought it would stay that way until the end of the appointment. Kayden came closer and told the boy that the cat was not calm and was extremely scared, and he stared at the striped cat sitting on the boy's lap. Jiwoo knew that Kayden had already taken a look at the cat, but he also wanted the opinion of a veterinarian and told Kayden that if he went along, everything would be fine. Kayden knew the boy was right in thinking that if he went along, everything would be fine. However, after realizing this, Kayden was furious because he realized that Jiwoo was trying to manipulate him into coming along. He glared at the boy with a scowl without saying what he was thinking. After that, the boy, who did not want and would not go to a boring place, tried to bribe him by offering treats in exchange. Not receiving any response from the cat, the boy thought better of it. He spoke while looking at some empty cans, noting that they were out of food and it would be good to buy some. Kayden, looking at the empty cans, realized it was true and that argument was valid. Now they were already on the street, and that large bicolor cat was impressing several people who thought it was cute. Jiwoo was happy because he was going to the vet with his cats, and girls were passing by and interacting with Kayden. Our protagonist noticed that Kayden looked dispirited and told him that the night air was very refreshing, perfect for stretching their legs. Jiwoo continued loudly talking to Kayden about how it was a nice evening for a collective outing. Kayden knew that people would soon think Jiwoo was a lunatic. Passing by was Woon, who was in the area. From afar, Woon noticed that the boy was with the striped cat as a result of the experiment. He realized this while watching the boy and the two cats pass by. Woon remembered his master's words, the man conducting the experiments. Woon continued to observe the boy talking to the two cats. The veterinarian greeted the boy and asked what he was doing there so late. Jiwoo explained that he wanted the vet to check the kitten in his arms, as he thought the cat was injured but wasn't sure. The vet began examining the cat while Kayden listened, observing the pet shop. Kayden spotted the canned food and tried to find a way to get closer, as the vet said that the reactions of the striped cat were normal, and there didn't seem to be any broken bones. Kayden was on a stool admiring the canned food. Turning and looking at Kayden, the vet said he was more concerned about the bicolor cat because it really needed a diet. Kayden, upset by the vet's comments, got off the stool near the boy. Jiwoo looked to the side and seemed impressed. He asked the vet why there were so many animals hospitalized there, and the vet replied that all were very injured and someone kept leaving them in front of the clinic. Jiwoo was disappointed to learn that someone was abandoning injured animals there. The vet continued, saying that before Jiwoo arrived, he had been doing emergency treatment on 2 animals that had arrived. Jiwoo wanted to know if they were suffering abuse. The vet said he wasn't sure. None of them showed physical injuries, but there was another problem. The vet did not have the proper equipment to conduct tests, but they were showing signs of substance dependence. Jiwoo and Kayden were outraged to hear that. Returning to the hideout where the awakener conducted his experiments, Woon descended the steps of a staircase. When opening a door, his master asked if he was slacking off again, and stared at him, expecting an answer. Woon said he had gone to dispose of the animals' bodies. The master warned him to be careful when outside, as trackers could show up at any moment. The awakener was upset because he couldn't understand why it wasn't working. He was sure he was administering the same amount of substance. Woon, interrupting his master, asked him a question. The master said he could ask. Woon asked what kind of ability the tracker his master had faced had. The awakener replied that from what he could see, it had something to do with movement. The tracker appeared in front and disappeared with the experiment in a fraction of a second. The awakener also said that if he had prepared for it, he would never have lost the experiment. He said all this with great anger and clenched lips. With much hatred, Woon's master said that if he found that tracker, he would eliminate its kind. Woon had an idea of who it might be but said nothing, only continued listening in silence.